giant tower and lived with a bunch of people who are different from me, and I learned Cantonese. That's not adventure as much as it is just traveling around and being a tourist and learning how other people operate. That's fun and that's cool, but I wouldn't really call that an adventure, right? Like I went to Canada in like a 26-hour drive, and we drove a long time in one sitting straight from Kingsport, Tennessee to New Brunswick in Canada, Moncton, New Brunswick in Canada. Long drive, but I would classify it as an adventure personally, but in the grand scale of things, it's not really. I mean, it's cool, but it's not like, Edmund Hillary or anything like that. It's not really an adventure in the classic sense, at least not that I would think of. It is when you put it in the context of what normal people usually do. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not like we're traveling around the world in a ship that's really, really small or anything like that. Because actually, the fun fact, by the way, this is Binary here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240 and hotnewstalkradio.com as well. Check us out on the TuneIn Radio app for your smartphone. That's the TuneIn Radio app on your smartphone. And you can listen to us anywhere in the world. Number to call in is 423-800-8949. That's 423-800-8949. I just chugged a whole, how many ounces? 15 fluid ounces of white chocolate Starbucks double shot energy coffee that barely classifies as coffee. So I am wired and good to go. I'm pumped up full of B vitamins, guarana, whatever that is, and ginseng, which is like that Chinese thing that's supposed to be good for you. So I'm good to go for the next hour. I hope you are too. Maybe you're getting an early lunch break and you're listening to us on your lunch break. If that's the case, hey, cool. Thanks, man. Really appreciate it. So we're not used to adventure in the classic sense. And a little trivia thing for you. Years ago for school, I was homeschooled. My mom took me to see an exhibit. It wasn't much of an exhibit as it was just a thing. Took me to see a replica of one of the ships that Christopher Columbus used to reach, well, the East Indies, but what he used to reach America, the continent of America, which may have actually been not Jamaica, but I think it was Haiti that they think he landed on. It was Haiti or Cuba. I don't recall which. But anyway, he found out that the New World was a real thing. He more or less discovered the general area of the Americas for those Europeans at that time, right? You can argue about Vikings, and that's cool. But, Christopher Columbus discovered that there is stuff over there, and he discovered it for the Western Europeans who didn't know about it. So, yeah, Christopher Columbus is an extremely important person, and taking him out of school is a really bad idea. But I went to see a replica of either the Nina, the Pinta, or the Santa Maria, and I think it was the Santa Maria that I went to see a replica of. And that ship was really small. I was really surprised, even as a young child, how small those ships are. And it's kind of like the capsules that they use in space when you think about it. And really, around the world travel back then was just as dangerous and expensive as traveling to the moon was in the 60s. Isn't that weird to think about? That was just as dangerous, in fact, maybe even more dangerous, and possibly comparatively expensive at the time to send a voyage over to the New World. That's such an amazing thing to think of today, for me. I think that's just an amazing thing to think about. But yeah, the ship was tiny, cramped, and they had 3 of them, but it was still, and they probably had, little boats to go along with them and everything, lifeboats and that sort of thing, but still very small ships, about the size of a modern yacht, I'd say. One of the larger yachts you see, and not nearly as safe as one of the modern yachts you see, because obviously it doesn't have rows or engines or anything like that. You're at the mercy of the wind. That's such an amazing thing to me, and we've lost that sense of adventure in modern society. Like if you go to places in the Middle East, they're adventuring every day to get water, right? If you go to places in Asia, I know the Middle East is part of Asia, but if you go to places in Asia like Tibet, they've got to go on adventures to gather food, right? And honey and psychedelics and all that sort of thing. Cool stuff. But here, and that's not to knock our culture, but we are very used to.
And not let you know this entire speech was scripted about 36 hours ago in my office because we knew more bad news is coming.
The notion that he would attack a Gold Star family.
Hey, time out, boss. When did he attack a Gold Star family? I think he reacted to a Gold Star family. I don't think Trump was sitting there in his bathrobe at Trump Towers blowing through the cable channels saying, hey, you know what, Ivanka, get me a Gold Star family on the phone. I want to harass them. I got a feeling he was responding whether or not you liked his response. That's separate over here. It's a New York real estate builder, magnate, developer, whatever, brand developer was attacked. He responded quickly. He didn't launch the first round.
That had made such extraordinary sacrifices on behalf of our country.
And I like how you also repay those veterans who made those extraordinary sacrifices with incredible VA care. Oh, wait a minute. What was the scandal with the 2 sets of book there, boss? Remember, like, hey, Sergeant Bob has an appointment in 30 days, but Sergeant Bob really had an appointment to VA in 90 days or more, and they were dying, and no one ever went to jail? It's a long line of people in the Obama legacy who are waiting to get into the Gray Bar Hotel. Lois Lerner, I'm pretty sure, is in there waiting from the IRS. Anybody involved with Fast and Furious waiting. Yeah, no, and there's our esteemed president.
The fact that he doesn't appear to have basic knowledge around critical issues.
So we've lost a sense of adventure that we used to have in modern society, and we really didn't even have it in modern society. And that's kind of a weird thing to me. But we're starting to get it back because we have the new frontier. Star Trek calls it the final frontier. I don't know if it's the final one, because maybe at some point we'll discover interdimensional travel. I don't know. But the final frontier is space. And the government has just done something very remarkable. Something actually kind of surprising to me, believe it or not. It has approved, the federal government of the United States has approved the first private mission to the moon. Now, this is obviously a very big deal, both in terms of free market arguments and in terms of just the general exploration of it. But a first private mission to the moon, also another private mission, manned mission from SpaceX to the International Space Station is going to be occurring soon. Now, obviously, this comes after years of government travel of space, and there wasn't really a whole lot of reason for private companies to get involved in going to space. But something that's worth noting is with the space missions, it's not like NASA built everything in and of itself, right? NASA designed a lot of things, and then private companies built them to those specifications. Now, it's not to downplay the role that NASA had in getting us to the moon or getting us with satellites up in space, but it is to say that there were a lot of private contractors that specialized in space travel, Boeing being one of the most obvious examples. The Saturn V was famously designed in part by Wernher von Braun, but it was built in with a lot of help from private contractors. So it's not entirely a government mission as much as we would like to think anyway. That's not to say there was no government involved, because there definitely was, but it was a lot less governmental than you might think, if that makes any sense. There's a lot of market play going on here. Not really free market, but market play going on nonetheless. The space missions were not free market by any stretch of the imagination, but they can be soon. And they could be now, in fact, because it's gotten so comparatively affordable to send crap up into space that now it's not bad at all to do it, actually, if you've got billions of dollars. Ours has the article saying that the Outer Space Treaty requires countries to authorize and continuously supervise the activities of space missions under their jurisdiction, including those of commercial companies. Well, in the United States, the Federal Aviation Administration carries out those duties with regard to private spaceflight, and things have worked well enough. But now a number of companies, including SpaceX with its Red Dragon mission, are seeking to push beyond Earth's orbit, which has been the traditional boundary for commercial activity. Perhaps the biggest of the many questions this raises is how permissive the federal government would be regarding this new commercial interest. Because let's say that SpaceX wants to go to the moon and establish a moon colony. Would NASA or the federal government just be okay with that? Would the federal government say, go ahead? Or would it say, yeah, look, you're not doing that? And what if SpaceX sort of ignored them and said, well, we're going to launch from Kazakhstan instead, and we'll have this government be approving of it, right? And they launch from Kazakhstan, and they go to the moon and promote a colony and build it. And what does the United States government do about that? Is there anything that it can do about that? Is there anything that any government can or should do about space travel? These are all questions that we have to answer pretty quickly. And I'm a free market kind of guy, so obviously I'm going to say government should have as little involvement in space as possible. Space, I think, should be treated like international waters are. Yeah, there are laws, because there are always laws everywhere, but they're not nearly as restrictive as they would be here on Earth or on national soil. The sovereign soil, they might call it wrongly. Somewhere out in space, it seems like it would be international waters type law, maritime law would apply. And if you watch The Martian, that's what the Martian believed, is a maritime law applied to him. So that would be really interesting to see, especially if, and this is an interesting scenario that I was just thinking of the other day. What if a mission goes up into space and mines an asteroid that is made of like nothing but gold? This is theoretical, but what if that happens? And then that mission brings back, multiple hundreds of tons of gold back to Earth. The price of gold now would plummet, because now you have gold, and you don't just have gold, you have gold that's even more expensive because it's space gold, right? It's gold that's been in space. So it's going to be worth a lot more than regular gold, unless they try to sell it on the regular gold market, which they could do, but I don't know why you would, because you could call for a premium price on space gold. So what would then happen to the global gold markets? Would there be a treaty that says you can't bring precious metals back to Earth? Well, that then would kind of defeat a lot of the purpose, though, of going into space. Because like 3/4 of the reason of going up into space is to get precious, seemingly anyway, precious materials to build electronics with. Like, say there's a diamond planet, and there actually is one. There actually supposedly is a planet that is made out of diamonds, and it rains diamonds on this particular planet. It's really weird, but I was reading about it the other day. What if you went to that planet and got all the diamonds and brought them back to Earth? The price of diamonds is now basically nothing. Diamonds are a dime a dozen, perhaps even literally. So what then happens to the price of diamonds? These are all things that we have to kind of figure out when we start having private moon missions and private space missions. And it's all really kind of bizarre stuff to think about, because there's a positive and a negative to it, just like everything else. There's always a silver lining, and there's always a big old storm cloud that could sink your ship or your spaceship. So the silver lining is electronics would be a heck of a lot cheaper. Materials would seemingly be infinite, because there are more materials out in space than we could ever possibly have on Earth. So all of our material needs would suddenly be met by these space missions that go up to space and get precious metals. Now we would have no deficit whatsoever of any precious material, and we wouldn't have any reason to, say, go to Africa and maybe to some argument exploit some of the people there in order to obtain diamonds, right? Like you read about the blood diamonds. And I don't know how true that is, but let's say for the sake of argument that that's a real thing. So then what do you do in that scenario? Because now there's always the argument that the people in Africa now are out of work. In the Congo, the industry has plummeted, and perhaps the Congo is now in a new civil war, or maybe just another civil war, because of this now lack of industry, this brand new lack of industry. So lots of Earth businesses would go under because of space travel and space mining. So I predict there will be some sort of treaty, some sort of agreement between countries, probably in the UN, that will restrict companies bringing back of precious materials to Earth. I believe that will be a thing soon, because as soon as word gets out that gold is not going to be worth anything anymore, things are going to change pretty drastically. And that would be possibly the most terrible thing to ever happen to the world economy, would be the price of gold being nothing and precious metals being worth absolutely nothing. They're not precious anymore. They're just metals. It's a catastrophic event that could happen because of space travel. And I really can't believe that any government or any market would let that happen, because then you have no way of making money anymore except for funding of space flights. But so many people make way too much money off of these items that it seems actually counterintuitive to want to go into space and collect these items. Kind of weird, isn't it? And I really do believe, and this is going to sound crazy conspiracy theory, but I really do believe that space travel, private space travel especially, has been sort of hampered and held back, or just not really looked at as seriously as it possibly could be, because of this. Because that the companies and a lot of the governments are afraid of gold being worth nothing, platinum being worth nothing, diamonds being worth nothing. Remember, there are a lot of governments that are propped up on these items. China, as a good example, does a lot of mining of rare earth minerals or rare earth metals. Rare earth metals, silicon being one of them, there are a few others, are used as computer components, and they're in processors, they're in transistors, which really are in processors. They're in all the little IC chips on your phone, your computer, your landline, your car. Everything that has an integrated circuit has rare earth metals in it. And China makes a lot of money selling that. China's economy would suddenly be worth absolutely nothing in terms of its actual physical value if rare earth metals now could suddenly be gathered from space and brought back for next to nothing. So that's why I think we're not in space as much as we could be. We have the capability, we have the capacity, if we just had the will and the money to get up into space and mine things. We could do it because we've done things that are perhaps even more extraordinary before. We can do it. It can be done. The money exists. The intelligence exists. The engineering prowess exists. I just don't think the funding and the will exists to do these things. And I'm honestly not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Because as much as I would love to have infinite amounts of everything, maybe infinite amounts of everything isn't really the best course of action for the economy. And I know it's a free market, or maybe it's not, but I know it should be a free market. So the market should decide whether or not we go up into space and gather these things. I understand that, and I'm fine with that. But personally, from my own perspective, never minding the market perspective, from my own perspective, it seems like it might actually be kind of a bad idea to mine things like gold, platinum, and silver from outer space. It just seems like a particularly bad idea because our Earth economy would suddenly tank because people got greedy. And that's happened many times before, and it'll probably happen many times afterward. But we'd have to find something new that would be precious that we could spend. So I'll leave this topic with a question, I guess. Should we go into space, and should we bring back gold and silver, which could potentially bring the price of gold and silver on Earth down significantly? Because gold and silver, remember, its rarity and its shininess has been the tacking point for economies for hundreds, thousands of years, right? Gold is a unit of purchasing power in the Bible, right? The gold denarii, right? Silver was a purchasing power unit in the Bible. Bronze, copper coins, all these things were purchasing power units in the Bible, in Bible times, thousands of years ago. And there are recorded instances of it after that, between those books of the Bible, after everything. We still use gold today in exchange for items. Gold is still seen as a relatively secure investment because it's real money. It's actual real money. So should we bring it back from space and lower the value of something that we've been using for thousands of years as a tacking point for what value is? I mean, think about money, right? Like gold has been I call it the tacking point, but gold's been the anchor point for years, hundreds of years, as to what the value of something is. You know, this is worth 2-ounce gold coins, right? This is worth this amount of silver. This is worth that amount of copper. This is worth that amount of gold. And that's been the case for thousands of years. And yes, we're using monetized debt now, but gold is still a major player in the world economy. So it's a weird world that we're working ourselves up to. And it does make you wonder, should we do it? We're at a crossroads in humanity almost. We have the opportunity to do great things that could potentially wreck us economically. Should we do them? What's your take? What's your answer? 423-800-8949 is the number to call in. 423-800-8949. It all sounds very sci-fi, right? It all sounds like something out of a Star Trek book or a Star Trek episode, I guess. I read the books too. It sounds like something out of a Star Trek episode. And it does kind of make you think. In Star Trek, they talk about how they don't have any need for money anymore. And I always thought that was, dumb socialist utopia stuff. But actually, maybe they don't have any need for money anymore because space travel is so affordable and doable that anything that's of value can just be obtained with a small mining vessel to the point where there's actually no need for money anymore because everything can be had and it's worth next to nothing. So replicators, services, the arts are worth a lot more than anything physical could be. Isn't that weird? That actually sounds almost realistic. And I wonder if Gene Roddenberry thought of that when he did Star Trek and when he wrote Star Trek. I kind of wonder if that's what he was going for. Space mining made everything affordable. I don't know. Kind of weird to think about. Then again, the replicator would technically make everything valuable, but it has to get its matter from somewhere. I don't know where it does that from. I'll have to read up on that. I'll read the Wikipedia in a few minutes here. This is Binary here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, hotnewstalkradio.com.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240. They're soaring worldwide. Prices for gold and silver are soaring worldwide. Rick Davis wants you to take advantage of them. Go to Rick Davis right now. Rick Davis Gold and Silver and get yours today. Your cash, and more cash. Go ahead, take advantage of them. Gold is soaring past $1,350 an ounce. That's $1,350 an ounce. Silver is out of this world too. Buy and sell at Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds. Gold, silver, jewelry, rings, watches. Rick Davis has got what you want. Right on. Cash, and more cash. Rick Davis has got so much cash it's as tall as a billboard. And he wants to stuff it in your pocket. Cash, and more cash. Yours for the asking. Come on in today and watch metals rise up as high as Rick's billboard. Rick Davis Gold and Diamond, 5301 Brainerd Road. You know where it is. Come get your cash, and more cash.
Rubber's tough, but foam rubber is soft. Foam rubber is the star at Stuff It Upholstery, which uses it to revive your couch, your embarrassing easy chair, your boat seat cushions. Stuff It Foam Rubber in Hickson covers Chattanooga and surrounding areas. Don't throw out that favorite easy chair that's grown haggard and barbaric. New life for your seat cushions. Premium auto-grade rubber foam for your restaurant, church, or business. Stuff It Upholstery brings comfort and relief. Go ahead, skid away from flat, dull, and droopy cushions. Relax, restore, revive. When comfort matters, stuff it. 4608 Hickson Pike, 877-1616. Ask for Larry. That's 877-1616.
On your signature, you can get $150,000. Can you believe that? $150,000 on your signature. Hi, I'm Bruce Krebs with the Entrepreneur Source. There's a program right now that you can get $150,000 on your signature with no pledge of collateral or personal guarantee. Call me at 423-875-5621 to learn more. 423-875-5621. You've been thinking about starting a business? Don't do it on your own. I have a proven track record for the last 13 years, a 96% success rate. I can guide you into a franchise where you will pay yourself through the startup phase with very low or little risk. Call me now. I'm Bruce Krebs at 423-875-5621. And make sure to listen to the Entrepreneur Hour every other Wednesday from 11 to 12 o'clock. Call me now, 875-5621.
I'm blowing everything up. We're starting over. I'm doing a new show. I want guys who push it to the middle of the table and go over the top. Take a risk, fail miserably. I'm right, and I'm not wrong, and I'll never back down. Conflict works. Allow it.
It's The Herd with Colin Cowherd. Right here and everywhere. Noon Eastern.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Hot 1240 Hot News Talk Radio with your Hot News Now update. Weed and guns on Chat State campus. A man was pulled over on Chat State campus, a traffic stop of a Ford Explorer. When the policeman said that he smelled weed, he asked the driver if he had weed. The driver said that he did. He also said he had 2 guns. The policeman arrested him. He's been put in jail now. And at his trial, he was sentenced to 18 months in prison because the prosecutor was okay with going lighter on him, considering the situation. A number of family members and friends were in the courtroom supporting him. The district of a state representative candidate shot to death on Glass Street. The suspect, Adrian Nixon, who's 29, has been arrested and identified now. He's been charged with criminal homicide, aggravated assault, reckless endangerment, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a dangerous felony. A $16 million stormwater project in St. Elmo is going to mean the closure of Broad Street in St. Elmo. Traffic will be redirected onto Tennessee Avenue starting in late September, early October. The project is hopefully going to be finished before the Ironman Rally in May. If it's going on in the Tennessee Valley, it's going on Hot 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Except more sunshine out there through the afternoon. Hot and humid as well. Highs 92 to 95. Tonight, lows 70 to 73. For Thursday, another hot, mainly dry day. Highs back into the mid-90s with a few more isolated afternoon storms returning on Friday. For lunch or dinner, come to Guthrie's, home of the original golden fried delicious chicken finger with their special world-famous sauce. Open daily, locations in Trenton, Signal Mountain, and Ringgold. Go get Guthrie's. It's always good. And I'm Sourcine 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Core.
On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
Things are changing rapidly in the world, in the markets, on the planet. Things are changing very rapidly, and it's an exponential curve, it seems. Politics are changing very quickly. How we think about the world is changing very quickly, and people are staying exactly the same because we always do. People never change, and we probably never will. People have stayed the same for hundreds, thousands of years, and we probably will continue to stay the same exactly because that's how we always are. That's just how it always is. But yeah, this is this is Binary here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, and hotnewstalkradio.com. You can listen to us streaming live on the TuneIn Radio app on your smartphone. That's TuneIn Radio on your smartphone, where you can listen to us streaming live anywhere in the world here at Hot News Talk Radio. One more space story, and we'll quit with space for today, I promise. But NASA has ordered a second manned International Space Station mission. There we go. International Space Station mission from SpaceX, the private company, of course, owned by Elon Musk. Although I guess to say it's owned by Elon Musk might be a bit of a mistake because it's actually owned by the shareholders and he's sort of the face of it, but whatever. SpaceX is going to fly humans to the International Space Station twice. NASA has confirmed it's ordering a second manned flight to the space station from the private space firm headed by Elon Musk. This brings the total number of four. That's interesting. The total number of planned launches carrying astronauts to the ISS under the Commercial Crew Transportation Capability Program. 4 astronauts will be brought over on a private vessel. It's easy to forget with all the hype over SpaceX and its reusable rockets, but the longtime government contractor Boeing actually got the lion's share of funding under the CCTCAP thus far. It's already secured 2 manned launches to the ISS, and now with the new order, SpaceX is on equal footing. So the contract both Boeing and SpaceX are operating under calls for at least 2 and as many as 6 manned International Space Station runs. SpaceX secured the second launch after completing an interim development milestones and developmental reviews. So we will have actual, real live, private space astronauts here soon. And that's one of the most exciting things in the news to me today. Yes, there's been some news about the Democratic National Committee being hacked. Not really significant news. Not really much of anything amazing so far, except if you read the news a few days ago, there was an interesting thing of note. Clinton might be linked to some companies that might be funding ISIS, which is shocking, except it's not. It's really not shocking at all. She's a politician, and it seems like every politician is in some way connected to ISIS monetarily, one way or another. In fact, it seems like, almost like, current government entities actually want ISIS to exist because it's very convenient for ISIS to exist. And I'm thinking, and I hope I'm wrong, but I'm thinking that there may be some sort of major event to occur at the Olympics, and that's not like a academic or elementary novel sort of prediction, to say the least. It's something that everyone seems to be thinking is going to happen. But there were ISIS operatives arrested in the Philippines. Apparently, they beheaded a Canadian citizen in the Philippines. So that's obviously kind of a big deal and hasn't been reported much in the news at all. If I handled international news, I'd be all over that. I unfortunately, maybe fortunately, handle local news and state news instead. So I don't really have any cause to talk about a Canadian citizen who's been beheaded by ISIS in the Philippines. That's an international incident and not really something for the local news. But if I were the news director at an international station like, say, Fox or CNN, I would be all over that. And they are not, for some reason. It's something that actually does almost affect us, and it doesn't really get talked about at all. It's astounding, really, how bad sometimes the media is. And I say the media like we're not part of it somehow, but we are. You know, the media is any entity that delivers information, particularly news. So we are very media. We're a multimedia outlet, after all, and we're very proud of it. But the media, when you say the word the media, the words the media, 2 words, it conjures up this image, right? We have an association when we say the media. You think about talking heads on television. You think about news reporters saying things that are only half true. You think about government officials pulling the strings behind CNN during the Gulf War, that sort of thing. That's what you think of when you say the media. You think Walter Cronkite, Shepard Smith, Megyn Kelly, all those people, right? Wolf Blitzer. You think of names like those. That's the media. and it's very nefarious, right? It's extremely nefarious. Maybe not necessarily in individual goals and individual aspirations. I don't think that the individuals have nefarious aspirations, but I do think that the people who are actually running the operations do. And I really do believe that. And I don't think that it's particularly conspiracy theory either. It just makes sense. It's something that it's very realistic, really, because if you are a major media outlet, you essentially control what people think about who. And it's if you're in that position, you're obviously going to be asked by people who are very powerful to maybe not say something about that guy, or maybe don't report on that story, or maybe because you have particular political affiliations, you don't need to be asked to not run a particular story, right? Because there are politicians who I like, who I have to talk about stories about them that aren't very favorable, and that's how the news is. That's the news process. If this particular individual is a good person, would be a good person to run a state, a county, a school board, whatever, then the news will speak for itself, right? The news about that individual and that individual's character should speak for itself. They shouldn't have to say, well, don't report on that story about me because I was caught with my pants down in the wrong instance, and, well, we've all been there, haven't we? It doesn't work that way, or it shouldn't work that way. But unfortunately, in a lot of news media outlets, it does seem to work that way. It's very frustrating when you look at the circle of people who run the media. And again, I'll use that umbrella term, the media. It's very frustrating when you look at some of the names that run both it and are involved in super PACs and are involved in lobbying groups and are involved in very nasty things. So it's just a shame that the American people are really not being properly informed in many ways. And it's something I was thinking about is instinct versus intelligence, right? I think that most people are reasonably smart, right? Like, I think most people are reasonably good problem solvers. And I think that we're actually getting to be better problem solvers because we play computer games and video games that force us to solve problems for that point, right? For that achievement, for that one up over the other player, for whatever little computer goal that we get. And I'm not talking down on it either, because I think it's a valuable thing to have. Problem-solving skills are essential, especially in the business world, and playing games really does develop those. So I'm very happy to say that I do play computer games relatively regularly, pretty much every night. For about 30 minutes, I'll play, maybe an hour, I'll play a computer game with my friends, and we have fun. And it's problem-solving skills, it's teamwork, it's good stuff, and it's perfectly healthy. There's nothing wrong with playing computer games. I'll just throw that out there, because so many people think, oh, well, you live in a dream world all the time, and you're going to be disconnected from reality. It doesn't work that way. It's just parents being scared because their kid played a violent game and they're worried that their kid's going to become a homicidal maniac. And listen, I played Grand Theft Auto San Andreas way before I should have, and I'm not a homicidal maniac. If your kid is a homicidal maniac, probably they would have been anyway. We don't like to think that our kids are going to be terrible people, but some of them just are. I've grown up with people who were pretty obviously going to be nasty people when they grew up. And guess what? They grew up and they turned out to be nasty people. And even if they have the best parents on the planet, sometimes even the best parents produce really nasty people. And that's just how life works. So we always want to blame computer games for everything, and that's just stupid. It's really just ignorant. It's wanting to avert blame to another party that's not responsible. But that's just typical humanity again. And the interesting thing about humanity is I think that we are very smart, usually. I used to think when I was younger and more cynical than I am already, which is astounding to think about. But I used to think that people were really stupid. But then I realized, no, people are pretty smart. It's just our instincts are being manipulated, right? Like how we think is being manipulated. We are pretty smart when given a situation and given the right information. But if the information's not being given, we're not going to draw the true conclusions. And that's how media operates. It doesn't give the proper information for people to draw the natural conclusion from things. Instead, it gives fragments of information presented and worded in a certain way so that people will think a certain way. And it's fascinating how effective it is because it does work. And I'm not sure how we can fix it because people have been so accustomed to that through the generations that we've become very gullible, although intelligent. If that makes any sense to you. I think that we are, on IQ and problem-solving levels, pretty smart people. generally speaking. But when it comes to gullibility, I think a lot of people are just way too gullible. And it's an unfortunate side effect of the society we live in because we rely on information being reliable, right? We take in so much information and we take a lot of it for granted that it's just true, right? You read something on Wikipedia, you just sort of assume that it's true because it's on Wikipedia. We've been using Wikipedia as a outlet for information for years and years and years. So we have no reason whatsoever to doubt that Wikipedia would ever lie to us. But it's been proven that there are people who edit Wikipedia articles who are very biased. And that came out, funnily enough, with a lot of events that weren't particularly political, were more just gender political, which I don't count as real politics because it's a bunch of made up nonsense anyway. But that shows my bias, doesn't it? If I were editing a Wikipedia article, I would be biased towards that position. And if someone else were to edit it, they'd be biased towards their position. So Wikipedia is not unbiased at all. And the media is not unbiased at all. There's no such thing as unbiased media because everyone will insert their bias into something, whether they realize it or not. And I think realizing that you have a bias and that everyone else does too is an important part of understanding how the world really works. Because people act rationally, but only in the context of how they think, if that makes any sense. There is rationale, there is objective rationale, I do believe that, but a lot of people, what they do situationally varies drastically on how their personality is. I don't react to certain things the same way other people do. I'm not saying that I'm a super genius or anything, it's just I'm sometimes, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn by any means, I don't think that I'm anything special, but I am sometimes a little bit more in tune with the situation, and other times, especially when it comes to women, I am not at all. So sometimes I'll notice things other people don't, and sometimes I don't. So people are just different. It's weird. People are very interesting to study. Fortunately, I didn't get a degree in anthropology because I would be probably a raving lunatic if I did, even more than I already am. By the way, speaking of the Democratic National Convention, apparently a DNC staffer got pop-up messages, according to our Stenica, alerting of state-sponsored actors. Huh? Now, listen, I don't know of any virus protection software, be it Avast, be it Malwarebytes, be it Kaspersky. I don't know of any malware protection software that will warn you you are being attacked by a state actor. I don't know of that ever happening. An email message, though, within the WikiLeaks dump of Democratic National Committee data suggests that the Yahoo account of one DNC staffer may have been specifically targeted by Russian hackers. The leaked message from DNC staffer Alexandra Chalupa, why she's named after a food item I don't know, includes a photo of a screen displaying a pop-up alert in Yahoo Mail saying, "Warning, we strongly suspect your account has been the target of state-sponsored actors." Huh. Okay. I didn't know Yahoo did that, but I guess they do. She says, "Since I started digging into the Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort, these messages have been a daily occurrence on my Yahoo account despite changing my password often," Chalupa reported in the message. She was looking into Manafort's work in Ukraine, where Manafort managed the campaign of former Ukraine President Viktor F. Yanukovych, who fled to Russia after violent protests against his regime, and worked with pro-Russian and Communist Party politicians forming an opposition bloc to the current government, which is possibly maybe a little bit fascistic and possibly maybe a little bit backed by the Americans, but whatever. That detail, spotted by cybersecurity researcher Matt Tate and posted to the Twitter account Pwn All the Things, offers another hint at the scope of the campaign to collect intelligence on DNC operations by what appears to be Russian-based actors operating on behalf of Russian intelligence. Earlier evidence collected by SecureWorks detected phishing attacks against the personal Gmail accounts of some DNC staffers, as well as attacks on DNC and Clinton campaign email addresses. Now, this is all very interesting, but I'm not sure what bearing it has on the information that was released. Now, I'll say this. If it comes out and if it's proven that the Russians were involved in hacking the email, that's another story. That's an interesting factoid, right? That's something that should be talked about. But that should not take away from what information was actually leaked, because it's an obvious diversionary tactic by saying, well, yes, look at what we had in our emails, but the Russians hacked it from us, so it should be more interesting to you. And that's not really how we should be thinking of it. We shouldn't be concerning ourselves with the Russian aspect nearly as much as we should be concerning ourselves with, what's actually in the emails. because there's some important stuff in there that people are ignoring over the story about the Russians hacking into it, because that does seemingly make for the bigger story. I don't think that the Russians hacking into anything is particularly new or big news. They've been into everything probably already. They're probably in the Republican National Conventions or National Committees emails as well. It's just a matter of who leaks what to WikiLeaks, honestly. So I don't see the Russian angle as being like shocking breaking news unless you're totally out of tune with what happens in the computer security world. It seems just obvious because Chinese teenagers get into the Pentagon, for heaven's sake, and we're worried about Russian state actors getting in the Democratic National Committee. It just seems obvious that they would be in there. The same goes for the Republicans. Same goes for the Pentagon, NSA, whatever agency you want to name. I think they all operate on the assumption that they're being watched by foreign state actors. I think that's just an assumption they have. Well, in blog posts from both companies, researchers at Fidelis and Threat Connect detailed the forensic investigation in the domain used in a hack of the DCCC's website that rerouted clicks by would-be donors to a lookalike site. The domain of the redirect site registered through a, quote, bulletproof, unquote, domain register service called IT-itch was a one-letter variation from the domain used by ActBlue, the DNC contribution processor. The fake email address used for the registrant was the same one that was used for a number of other domains that were part of an earlier attack by the Fancy Bear group, researchers reported. So all interesting stuff, but again, the contents of the DNC emails should be much more interesting than who obtained them. It seems like a diversionary tactic, and it seems to be working, unfortunately. Number to call in is 423-800-8949. That's 423-800-8949 is the number to call in here at Hot News Talk Radio AM 1240 and hotnewstalkradio.com. Every new technology should be looked at with some scrutiny and caution. And I'm not saying that we should become Luddites or Amish, but I am saying that we should be cautious of what we use, right? One of the things we should be cautious of is anything that attempts to read anything physical on us. And Samsung has released the Galaxy Note 7, the new flagship for 2016. It's basically a bigger Galaxy 7 with a stylus. It's the Galaxy Note 7. But this year, Samsung is adding an iris scanner and finally upgrading to USB Type-C, which is great because USB Type-C should have been used 2 years ago, but it's a reversible USB standard. It doesn't matter which way you plug it in. It's always plugged in the right way. It's a lot like what Apple has already, but now it's on Android, and it's faster and better, basically. It's like Lightning, but it's different. It's like Lightning, but it's an open standard, which, if that doesn't mean anything to you, an open standard is something that anyone can use with proper licensing. So there's no worry about, I have to pay royalties to Apple to use Lightning. You don't have to pay royalties to any, the USB consortium or anything like that to use USB Type-C. It's totally open. Anyone can use it, and multiple specs are available for you to look at. The entire schematics are there to look at. It's safe. It's good, unlike proprietary stuff a lot of the time. But the Galaxy Note 7 has that iris scanner. And just like with the fingerprint scanner, I will say this. Don't use it. And that sounds paranoid, but I'm serious. Don't use it. The fingerprint scanner on the iPhones, I'm almost certain, is not secure and also could be easily used to capture the information of individuals to get their fingerprints without actually having to have them go through a fingerprint scanner. It is, but it's not, right? And the iris scanner, I think, is basically the same thing. It scans your irises, and that information could very easily be obtained by either domestic or foreign governments. So there is basically no way you should ever be using an iris scanner of any kind on any device. I would not recommend it. I wouldn't do it. It's simply not safe. Having physical information that is unique to you stored on a device that could very easily be either hacked into or stolen seems like a very bad idea. Because somewhere down the road, that information could be used to, say, open a bank account. Maybe banks issue a new standard that lets you, instead of having a PIN code, read your iris, right? And suddenly now your bank account's been hacked into because your phone was stolen 3 years ago. So you see how dangerous this can be. I would not recommend, by any sense of the imagination, I would never ever recommend using a iris scanner on a phone. Bad idea. Just like fingerprint scanners. Bad idea. It's just too creepy to me. And I don't mean that just because of an emotional response, but I mean that because of a security one too. It's just too creepy. Don't do it. Just like buying the smart TVs that have microphones on them. Don't do it. This is Binary here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, and hotnewstalkradio.com. Colin Cowherd, one of the best sports shows on the history of the planet, coming up next here on Hot News Talk Radio.